The Haunting of Blackwood Manor, a disturbing true story. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of rural Virginia, Blackwood Manor stood as a relic of a time long past. It was a sprawling Victorian estate, its once beautiful facade now cracked and crumbling, overtaken by ivy and the creeping decay of time. Local folklore had long painted the mansion as a cursed place, a breeding ground for sorrow and suffering. For years, no one dared to venture too close to the manor after dark, save for the bravest of thrill-seekers. Even they, though, seldom returned with the same brazen attitude. The origins of Blackwood Manor's curse began with the Blackwood family, wealthy landowners during the Civil War era. The patriarch, Richard Blackwood, was a ruthless man known for his cruelty toward his slaves and workers. Rumor had it that he had a secret chamber hidden beneath the mansion where he carried out unspeakable acts of violence. It was said that, over time, the very walls of the mansion absorbed the pain, suffering, and malevolence that festered within its halls, leaving it forever tainted. The tragedy of the Blackwood family. In 1865, tragedy struck the Blackwood family. Richard Blackwood's wife, Annabel, a beautiful and kind-hearted woman, became ill with a mysterious ailment. She wasted away, her once radiant face turning gaunt and ghostly, and no doctor could explain her condition. As Annabel's health declined, the couple's only daughter, Evelyn, began acting strangely. Neighbors reported seeing the young girl wandering the property late at night, talking to invisible figures, her eyes wide with fear or sometimes eerily blank. Soon after Annabel's death, Evelyn vanished without a trace. Richard Blackwood spiraled into madness, claiming his daughter had been taken by spirits that haunted the house. He became a recluse, locking himself in his mansion and never emerging again. A few months later, his body was found hanging from the grand chandelier in the foyer, his face twisted in terror. No one knew what had driven him to such a grisly fate, but the legend of Blackwood Manor was born that day. The townspeople whispered of dark rituals, of restless souls seeking vengeance for the atrocities committed by Richard Blackwood. It was said that Evelyn's spirit, trapped between the world of the living and the dead, still wandered the house, searching for peace that would never come. The lure of the haunted house. The years passed, and Blackwood Manor fell into disrepair. No one dared live there, and it became the subject of ghost stories and campfire tales. But in 1982, a new family, the Carters, bought the house. Mark and Sarah Carter were excited to start a new life in the countryside with their two children, Emily and Thomas. They dismissed the house's grim reputation as mere superstition, eager to restore the manor to its former glory. At first, everything seemed normal. The family was enchanted by the house's grand architecture, with its winding staircases, tall windows, and ornate woodwork. But it didn't take long for strange occurrences to begin. Emily, the youngest child, was the first to notice the eerie atmosphere that hung over the house. She was only 6 years old at the time, but even at that young age, she was attuned to things that others could not see. She began complaining of the lady in the white dress, who would watch her from the corner of her room at night. Her parents, assuming it was an overactive imagination, reassured her that no one was there. But Emily was insistent, describing the woman as pale and sad, her eyes hollow and full of grief. It wasn't long before Thomas, the older brother, began hearing footsteps in the hallways at night when everyone else was asleep. He would wake up to the sound of creaking floorboards just outside his bedroom door. But when he opened it, no one was there. The family dog, a usually fearless German shepherd named Max, would growl at seemingly empty spaces, his fur bristling as if something unseen was standing right in front of him. The Descent into Fear. The true terror began one stormy night in October. The family was gathered in the living room, watching television, when the power went out. The house was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning from the storm outside. Sarah went to retrieve some candles, and that's when the knocking started. It was faint at first, just a gentle tapping on the walls, but soon the knocking became louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from every direction, echoing through the house as if someone or something was trying to get in. The family huddled together in fear, unsure of what to do. Then came the whispers. Low, unintelligible murmurs filled the air, coming from the walls themselves. They were soft at first, barely audible, but they grew louder and louder until the family could hear distinct voices, many voices, speaking at once. Sarah screamed for it to stop, and for a moment, everything went silent. The house held its breath. Then, with a deafening crash, the chandelier in the foyer came crashing down, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The noise was so sudden and violent that it shook the entire house. The family rushed to the front hall, only to find the massive chandelier lying in a heap of broken glass and twisted metal on the floor. But that wasn't the worst of it. There, standing at the foot of the stairs, was the figure of a young girl. She was dressed in an old-fashioned nightgown, her hair hanging limply around her shoulders, and her eyes were wide, staring straight ahead with a blank, soulless expression. It was Evelyn Blackwood, just as the legends had said. Her lips moved, but no sound came out, and then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she vanished. The family fled the house that night, leaving behind everything they owned. They never returned. Investigations and uncovering the past. In the months that followed, the story of the Carter family's ordeal made headlines, drawing the attention of paranormal investigators and curious onlookers alike. A well-known investigative team, led by the husband and wife duo Michael and Elizabeth Hargrove, was called in to examine the property. The Hargroves had made a name for themselves in the field of paranormal research, and they were eager to explore the infamous Blackwood Manor. When they arrived, they set up their equipment: thermal cameras, EVP recorders, motion sensors, everything needed to capture evidence of the supernatural. On their first night, they experienced the same knocking and whispers that the Carters had described. The Hargroves heard disembodied voices in their EVP recordings, voices that begged for help, pleaded for release. But the most chilling discovery came when they ventured into the basement. At the back of the basement, hidden behind a crumbling wall, they found what appeared to be a secret room, a room that perfectly matched the descriptions of Richard Blackwood's rumored torture chamber. Inside, they discovered old iron chains attached to the walls, and in the center of the room was a small wooden table stained with dark, dried blood. The air in the room was thick with an oppressive energy, so heavy that it made it difficult to breathe. But that wasn't all. Scrawled across the walls, written in what looked like a mixture of soot and blood, were cryptic symbols and words in Latin. The Hargroves, unable to decipher them on their own, later consulted with an expert in ancient languages. The translation was grim. In this house, the dead will never rest. Blood calls to blood. The investigators left the house the next day, convinced that the spirits trapped within its walls were far beyond their ability to help. They concluded that Blackwood Manor was not just haunted by one ghost, but by the countless souls who had suffered and died there, their pain feeding into the house's malevolent energy. The curse lives on. Today, Blackwood Manor still stands, abandoned and overgrown. No one has lived there since the Carters fled, and the house remains a place of fear and dread. Locals claim to see lights flickering in the windows at night, and some even report hearing the faint sound of a little girl crying in the distance. But no one dares get too close. The legend of Blackwood Manor lives on, a reminder that some places are cursed beyond redemption. The house, they say, is alive, feeding off the misery of those who died within its walls, waiting for its next victim. And so, Blackwood Manor remains a terrifying enigma, a haunting tale that serves as a warning to those who might think of disturbing its eternal rest.